Play at Novabet.
Hello, and thanks for tuning in to another episode of the Irish Angle in association with Novibet. Delighted to be joined again this week by Johnny Ward to have a look back on everything that happened in the last week or so. Johnny, we were both in Ballydoyle this morning, probably for definitely one of the wettest mornings of the year in the middle of May. You wouldn't really be expecting that, but a lot of key takeaways, I suppose, from the day. I thought just the confidence around City of Troy was really, really noteworthy. I suppose we discussed it last week. Has Aiden swayed you any bit? You were quite critical of him last week. Has your opinion changed at all since?
Yeah, I'm just it's a little bit dark. I'm recording it from Ryan's in Cashel. So I met you obviously. I'm up at Aiden's, and I went to Paddy Toomey's. So we just popped in here to get this show on the road. Has my confidence changed? I don't know. I mean, he's gone into like favourite for the Derby now, despite the fact he ran so abject in the Guineas. And I suppose people say when you're explaining you're losing, and Aiden spent a lot of time today completely defending the horse. And there was an extraordinary moment, really, I suppose. And you were there when he went up to kind of show the height of the horse relative to his chin, Aiden's chin. So this is really like he basically showed that the horse is actually bigger than people say. And he was saying that he might look small at Newmarket, but he isn't small really. But I feel the jury's very much out on him. There has really been no really convincing explanation for how badly he ran in the Guineas. You might say the same about Auguste Rodin last year, but I do remain to be convinced, but having said that, Aiden O'Brien is if the horse keeps bombing like he did in the Guineas, Aiden O'Brien is going to look like a bit of a fool. So he obviously doesn't believe that the horse is finished.
Yeah, I mean, he's definitely putting his neck on the line for this horse. Like he continues to say that this is the most talented horse he's ever sent to a Derby. Look, I know maybe they can hype up horses a little bit, I suppose, looking at them as breeding prospects and stuff like that. But you'd imagine after a run like that in the Guineas, he'd be a little bit more timid if he wasn't totally confident in it. And kind of something I took away from the morning as well is how critical Aiden was of himself. He always seems to blame himself for these mishap with the horses, even talking on Henry Longfellow as well. He said it was his fault giving Ryan the instructions. It's kind of, look, I suppose being so hypercritical of himself, is that, do you think that's something that maybe drives him to being like the level that he's at? He's always tried to improve what he's doing and stuff like that.
Yeah, I honestly don't take him very seriously when he blames himself, because he never praises himself. So if you're not going to ever praise yourself, your criticism by my kind of reckoning anyway doesn't matter as much, because Aiden is a very unique character, and I've never met a more humble trainer. Some trainers will tell you about every race that they won and are going to win, and Aiden just doesn't do that. He's very, very humble, and you can see today he knows all the work riders' names and all of that, and it's a team operation. He's very thankful and all of that. And he might have said to Ryan Moore in France, ride the horse to come home. He said the same with Auguste Rodin. I mean, Auguste Rodin's performance in Maidan was just crap. Like, I mean, and it was the sort of race that Aiden was talking about. But if you're disadvantaged by a bad pace in a race, you're going to finish. In a position, but you're still obviously going to run well if you're in the race. And he's just completely in and out horse for whatever reason. There are suspicions that he has problems that are haven't been explained yet. Maybe not. I don't know. But he does. Auguste Rodin has definitely a capability of running badly as well as he is good. But with Aiden blaming himself, I wouldn't read too much into that. To be honest, I think that's just part of his nature. But let's just say at Epsom, he's one thing less to blame, because they say that the horse wasn't right when he went to Newmark, in the sense that he treated him like a god over the winter. It's kind of hard to know what to make of that, because Aid knows how to train Guineas winners.
Yeah, I suppose we saw so many classic trials as well during the week. Was there any other kind of key takeaways you took from this morning? And was he bullish on any other horses, maybe apart from City of Troy? I suppose the confidence was there for all to see. I thought he was kind of noteworthy the way he was talking about Rubies and Red. I thought she was really, really eye catching when she ran during the week. She was obviously touched off that day, but I think she's half the price that the winner was. Was she beaten by you? You got to me, I think, bucked out and made all. Maybe it wasn't Ryan Moore's best day in the saddle, but I think Aiden made a comment as well saying that they kind of left a little bit on all of their horses going to the trials this year, kind of with a view to getting the best out of them later on in the season. I thought like she was so far behind, she just swallowed up the ground. He was kind of comparing her to her sister Found, saying there was similarities between them as well. I'd say she could be right up there with Ylang in the Oaks picture. Was there anything else you took from it?
It's funny because like we spent we spend 90% of the day maybe talking about a horse that was beaten 20 lengths in the Guineas.
I was actually going through my audio of it there earlier, and I think I probably have 20 minutes of audio, and I'd say at least 12 or 15 minutes for City of Joy. It
Yeah,
just
and
kept coming back to him, didn't
it
it?
was kind of like, I was reading Bruce Scott's report in the Sunday Times on the race, and I'd honestly say 80, 85, maybe 90% of the race was about a horse that was well beaten. And you know, I'm long enough in the game to know that you deal with an odds-on favourite differently to other horses, but like we had a very good winner of the Guineas, and today was the same. It was just like maybe Aiden doesn't really have a star, if he doesn't have one in the shape of the horse that was, as I say, well beaten, like the first horse beaten practically in the Guineas. But the filly you mentioned, she was actually the only horse I really kind of asked him about as she was walking by. I didn't really ask him about any other horses. I spent a bit of time at the end of my broadcast with Los Angeles, who was very, very good at Leopardstown. Might talk about him a bit, but she Rubies are Red was a. I thought this was a very nice performance, and Aiden, the way he was talking, it was kind of just we're having a chat. It was like we're educating the horse here. This is a maiden, and maidens have won classics for us. It was a lovely performance. If she didn't handle the track, that's a possible excuse. But as you say, the way she rattled home, beating half a length, herself and Alang Alang, they're very good prospects of winning the Oaks, I think.
Yeah, I suppose you mentioned Los Angeles there. He was obviously impressive, I suppose, enough winning the Cashel Derby trial there in Leopardstown yesterday. I suppose like contrasting to City of Troy, like he looks like a real big strapping horse on the telly, whereas City of Troy, I think Aiden was kind of defending his size more than anything. Maybe it's not as easy to spot. He's 16-1, according to Aiden measuring him this morning, but Los Angeles, like he looks big. I'd say he'll probably improve an awful lot from him. Were you impressed by him? You'd imagine he'd have to come on a bit still to be in the Derby picture, but I think he's only 8-1 now for Epsom.
Yeah, he's only 8-1. Like Leopardstown hasn't. I suppose it's not really the trial track that it used to be. The the really good Derby horses from Maiden's kind of team tend to go to the Guineas now more so. And if they win the Guineas, that's great. And if they don't, it's an exceptional horse to win a Guineas in a Derby. Los Angeles was sent off 4-5 in a race that honors the Cashel Palace, which is next door to where I'm recording this. And I wasn't sure about that, to be honest. I wasn't sure about how good he would be. Camelot as a sire is fairly exposed at this stage. He's gotten Luxembourg and some good horses, but like in general, Camelot's you'd be surprised if he got a really, really top class horse. But Los Angeles, what was the comments in running say stayed on towards finish. He actually showed a turn of foot at the end. It was a messy enough race. I had tipped up Taraj, who was well backed and seems to be well regarded. And he looked like he had a chance, but he had nothing compared to the finishing kick of Los Angeles. And I have to say, I really liked this horse's performance. I was around the stable just as we were recording the finish of our footage today, and he's a bit of a character of a horse, a bit of a Monju in him. He's a bit of feistiness in him, and I'm the more I was there at Aiden's Day, Emma, the more I was really looking forward to the Derby, to be honest, because I'd be mad keen to take on City of Troy.
Yeah, and I thought the way Aiden spoke with the Derby as well. I suppose maybe online people maybe knocking Derby winners as maybe stallion prospects, considering I suppose the obsession with speed and breeding now. But like looking at like Ballydoyle, Coolmore, like they dominate the breeding scene here in Ireland anyway, and like they still think it's the number one race doing. It's the only race Aiden seems to want to win. It's kind of the number one goal. I might add a few clips of him talking about it to the end of this video, but just the way he talked about winning the Derby, like I'd say even if City of Troy could put that Guineas thing win behind him, I'd say winning the Derby would be the number one for any horse in Ballydoyle. But I suppose looking at other horses who ran during the week, Los Angeles, you mentioned him. No, sorry, I actually meant to ask you this as well. I think out in Hong Kong, they publish the weight and the height of every horse on the race card. Do you think, like, just listening to the way Aiden talked about City of Troy and, like you mentioned, Los Angeles, I think Aidan spoke of how City of Troy weighed different coming into different races and how he had gotten heavier and stuff like that. Do you think that information should be made public here? Like, would it help like the likes of a punter there who, obviously doesn't get to the races to see the horse, doesn't know what kind of weight they are, they don't have the access to get this information from the trainers? Like, should that be made available like it is out in some countries, or would it just be adding kind of more information that maybe mightn't be of much use to punters, I suppose?
No, as I said, since I started like getting on a bike a bit during the lockdown and discovered Strava and thought this was the most amazing thing. And Aidan was on about like a Fitbit for horses today in relation to City of Troy, and it was another kind of, it was almost like God, how many things can he tell us about this horse? But he's a very alert horse. You could notice that around him. But he was on about his Fitbit and how kind of alert he was around Newmarket and so on and so forth. But in terms of the weight of horses, like I think Strava, in terms of how races are ridden, would be vital to tell you how much, kind of ground a horse covered, what sectional times he did at all points throughout the race, or she did, all sorts of stuff like that. Was this the best horse in the race? In terms of weight, absolutely. And like Emma, if you're able to, like, AI and algorithms and basically like stuff that doesn't require human control, will be able to tell you an awful lot about a race just based on data. And if the data can tell you, well, this horse was weighing this going into the race, and in his next race or her next race, they were, weighing, he or she was weighing this. It all actually helps. It completely helps. Like, and if you knew the weight of, say, if you were backing a horse in a maiden and he was like 10% heavier than the horse that was second favorite, would that matter to you? These are things that I think we should actually, we should talk about more. And absolutely anything like that. We're very backward in Ireland, I think, in terms of our, we're very sort of old school. Like, we add on race distances. There could be 100 yards in a race, and we don't seem to mind it. Like, we give ground descriptions that are questionable at times, and then we change them after the jockey say something different after the first race. So anything like that and data in terms of actual hard facts for me is good for racing.
Yeah, I'd agree with you definitely. For flat horses, I mean, like a 2-year-old going into the 3-year-old season, like it seems to be fairly valuable for punters, knowing how much weight they've put on, how if they've grown much and stuff like that. So, I'm not sure if there's anything that they're looking into in Ireland, but I can imagine it would only be kind of a help to punters, like it would help them get more informed. And yeah, I agreed. I think that should be maybe something that should be looked into more. But I suppose looking at the races in France at the weekend, Henry Longfellow, you were fairly unforgiving in City of Troy on his performance. I think Henry Longfellow, there's probably more excuses for him. He was knocked around a small bit. He was kind of maybe being touted as the star behind City of Troy among the Ballydoyle 3-year-olds. Could you see him? I think the target is the St James's Palace now, according to Aidan this morning. Could you see him bouncing back from that Guineas run in France, or would you be less confident on him now as well?
I know, like I'm not sure he had as many excuses as maybe you would have you would have looking at the race. It was a mess of a race, really, and it was a mess of a race. And just up at Paddy Toomey's there, he talked about a horse that could go off the race, which will feature later on, but on Racing TV maybe next week or whatever. But Henry Longfellow, for me, he was sent off a hot favourite, and I think that he had virtually no chance. He'd want to be an absolute superstar to win with the sort of the way the race developed in terms of the fractions. But Diego Velasquez, I was surprised, Emma, that he was sent off 17-1 on the tote. Like, this is a horse who cost, what did he cost, like 2.5 million or so as a yearling by
Mm.
Frankel. He's, Broome and Point Longsdale and that pedigree by Frankel. Like, that's an incredible pedigree. Like, Australia is a fairly limited stallion. It gets stairs, and this is basically his premier kind of mating so far. And as much as he bombed out at Doncaster, Diego Velasquez is not a horse to be given up on at all. His story hasn't been told yet, and he, for me, again, he was just a horse that came up the near side, wasn't able to go with him because it was such a slow pace. He's a horse that wants a mile and a half. But like, in terms of Henry Longfellow, and I think Henry Longfellow has a full sister who's going to run this year, uh, which would be minding
Mm.
second horse, and I think might be already named, but in any event, I think this horse is still very interesting going forward. Baidu Bowie out of minding, so like really might be a horse to step up and trip for all that they're talking about keeping the horse at a mile. And Aidan, it was interesting. He said, like, Ryan really looked after him once his chance was gone. He doesn't like kill a horse when the chance is gone, and he's a horse I'd still be very interested in. But I'd say the same about Diego Velasquez.
Yeah, I'd be fairly forgiving on Henry Longfellow now, to be honest. I don't think he got much of a chance to get into the race. You could see every time Ryan tried to edge out, he was getting blocked in, horses going past him. Yeah, look, I think Aidan described it as a bit of work. Look, he'll have to step forward from it for sure, but I wouldn't be surprised to see him bouncing right back at Ascot. But I suppose moving on to outside the Ballydoyle winners, I suppose One Look was another one of the really exciting ones who got out on Sunday. She was, I suppose, surprisingly enough, beaten in the Muta Makina Stakes. Look, I suppose it was much stiffer opposition than she met in Cork when she was 1 to 20 on Buttons. Obviously, a very good mare, but I suppose it was a surprise winner, Wendla for Colin Keane. I thought Colin was really deadly from the front here. They absolutely crawled for the first few furlongs. I saw Shane Foley getting interviewed afterwards, and he said just put a line through the run. She just wasn't able to quicken. Like, it was just turned into an absolute sprint. What would you make on One Look now for the Irish Guineas? I think she was on 2 to 1 favoured for it before that, but she's drifted out a bit in the betting now since.
Yeah, I wouldn't be going near her, to be honest, after that performance. She has to kind of prove, I suppose, that she's trained on as well. She won a nothing race really in Cork, which didn't tell us anything. And for all of that, she still ran to a good level here. She wasn't anywhere near the potential that she showed it to. I have to say, like, the more I go racing of late and watching these flat races, like, it's just fascinating to watch how these races develop. And we have serious jockeys in this country. And as you say, like Colin Keane basically dictating from the front at a slow pace. I wasn't watching the race in running, but I'd say, the fillies price shortened dramatically. And maybe Wendell deserved to be a little bit shorter on the betting as well. She's very, very good form. I know she's beaten the last day at Leopardstown behind Paddy's a Lilac Roller, but she has good form. Buttons for me rated 99 looks a shade vulnerable going into the race, but what a ride from the front. What a ride in the front. And Colin is, I'd say he probably is the best in the country at that. But One Look for me, I think there were question marks raised by this because, she didn't really have any, she had excuses relative to the pace of the race, but she was still very well beaten.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how she comes out of that. Like you mentioned, Paddy Toomey, I think he had 2 or 3 kind of good contenders for the Irish Guineas. So, interesting to see who Billy Lee gets on. I'd imagine it'll be Lilac Roller, might be his number one string at
And
the moment.
it's mad as
But
well. We're just talking about this today. Like Shamey Heffernan potentially could be riding the second string in the
mm.
Guineas for Paddy Toomey. Can you imagine if Shamey rode the Guineas winner and possibly beat a horse trained by Aiden on a Paddy Toomey second string in 2024? You heard it here first.
Shamey seems to be riding for everyone at the moment. I think I saw you interview him during the week, and he said he's hungry to find more places to ride out. But nearly every trainer who seems to get interviewed seems to say Shamey's in there riding a couple of times a week. So, yeah, to be interesting to see what he's up on the Guineas. Imagine it'll probably be one of Paddy Toomey's fillies. But Wendla, I suppose it'd be interesting to see where she goes next. I don't think she's any really fancy entries. She's in the Goring Classic, all right, later on in the summer, but she's not entered in the Oaks or the Guineas. So, interesting, will Gerlines be enticed into supplementing her for something off the back of that performance? But yeah, brilliant riding from Colin Keane. I think he was probably the winning of that race. They win kind of the pace. They're going to be going in a 3 mile chase for the first few furlongs, and he just absolutely kicked, and she had a great turn of foot. But I think that's probably most of the classic action wrapped up. Johnny, you were racing a bit during the week. You were in Kearney yesterday. Anything else from the week that really caught your eye, or anything interesting happening?
Yeah, I was in Navan on Tuesday. Yesterday I was in Killarney, as I say. It was good old buzz in Killarney. There was I suppose the talking points maybe solitary man's performance for me in the novice chase. Enda Bulger's a gas man. Like it's like trying to interview him after the race, but like there must have been about 50 contenders for the Kerry nomination for the Rose of Tralee. So I was like, and Pat Healy was in his element, as you know. Pat Healy being his element, I was like, when are we actually going to get? And I think Enda went up to get the award, and then all the ladies came across. Then I ended up interviewing 2 of them. Still hadn't interviewed Enda. Enda eventually came over and basically said, like, I told the owner not to back this horse today, that he needed a run. Solitary Man was my horse actually to take out of the week. I love this horse for as a summer chaser. And I'd actually be tempted to run him in the Galway Plate if he could get a mark to get in this year. And I know he's only a novice, but he'd have something in hand, and that's something like Ashley Meadow won the race last year when he had a bit in hand, but you might have something in hand to hurdle. It's quite hard in the place, and I think you nearly need to go in as a sophomore or as a novice. Maybe he's a little bit lightly experienced for that. But maybe if we got one more run into him, and he should act around Galway, I'd be very interested in him. Lovely horse going forward, and Inda really likes him and loves Darrow O'Keefe as well. He's full of praise for him.
Yeah, I think Dara started off with it, didn't he? Back when he was getting going. But yeah, Solitary Man, he's a horse I really like as well. He had really good kind of grade 2, grade 3 form over hurdles. Probably always looked like a chaser. And I was watching it yesterday. I think he was pretty weak in the market. Probably because then they were saying he needed the run, but I grinded it out well. Yeah, it's not a bad shout there for him for Galway. But I'd say my horse to follow for the week. I'm going to stick with Ruby's or Raid. Or I'd say look, she's around 8 or 9 to
That's
1
a good
for the
shout.
Oaks. Ylang, the stablemate, obviously favourite, but I wouldn't be surprised to see her taking a massive step forward. I think it was a big step forward on her form so far. And just the ground she made up, like we've spoken about it. I won't repeat everything we were saying, but yeah, she just flew home, and like I'd say she should love the downhill finish at Epsom. So she'd probably be my one to follow for from the week. So
One
she'll
other
wrap
thing,
it up
actually,
there. So
I
we'll
did want to mention was I met Paul from he lives outside Nottingham, and I think we'll have an image of him here. But I met him at the race yesterday, and he said he was a big fan of the show. He's trying to get to all the race courses in Ireland and Britain. He's 3 shorts, Roscommon, Tipperary, and I forget what the other one is, but yeah, he loves the show, and he was loving it at Clarny yesterday. What a racetrack to go to, and I just said I'd give him a mention.
fair play to him of all the racetracks. Have you done all the racetracks in Ireland? I presume you
I
have.
wasn't in Tralee, but I've been in all the racetracks many times. But in terms of Britain, like I was saying this to, I was talking to Greg from the Guardian today, and it was like on about Bath and Chester, and like haven't been to Bath past Chester on the train recently, but there are loads of racetracks in Britain I'd love to go to. Newmarket, haven't been to Epsom. So all of these are ahead of me. I know
Mm.
you. What did you make of Newmarket?
I actually loved Newmarket. It was my first time there last week. Must try and get back to the July course, maybe to the July Cup or something later on in the summer. But I've actually never been to Dundalk. It's Dundalk is I think
You've never been to
Dundalk and
Dundalk?
Bellewstown is only 2 on my list.
Ah, stop.
Never been to Dundalk, no. I know it's strange. I've probably been to the rest of them a couple of times, but Dundalk and Ballydoyle are 2 that I have to take off. Probably have to get up to Dundalk now and next winter for a Friday night up there. But yeah, I've actually done very few in the UK, to be honest. I've done Cheltenham, Mascot, a couple other ones. I'd actually love to go to Perth. It always looks like good crack in there.
Yeah,
It might be a trip for the summer. But yeah, look, we'll wrap it up there. Anyway, thanks very much, Johnny, and thanks everyone for tuning in. If you liked the show, make sure and like and subscribe. There'll be a couple of clips coming from the Aiden O'Brien stable tour as well. No, sorry, not a stable tour, just a little tour from all the updates from Aiden. But we might add the City of Troy clip to the end of this video. But thanks for tuning in. We'll be back on Friday for a form scan show. So thanks a million and goodbye.
When we stand into a horse, we always chin them at 15.3. That would be my chin. I'll just show you where 15.3 is on this horse. So there's 15.3, everybody. So there's 16 hands, and he's nearly 16.1. So he's very, very deceiving horse. I would imagine there was probably everyone was saying that he looked small in the Guineas. I would imagine there was very few horses as big as him in the Guineas, but it's just the way he's proportioned. He looks much smaller than he is. You can see him. He's obviously out of Galileo mare. He's loads of scope underneath. He walks with a big long stride. Andrew, we might tack him up again. Is that okay? Thanks. In your own time, Andrew. That's what we always thought. The Derby would really suit him as well. He's so balanced. He's a long stride, but he's a very nimble horse. Yeah. Do you know? Does that make sense to you?
Absolutely, yeah.
You know, and you can see where I was chinning 15.3 on, which is very, very deceiving. You know, so. Listen, he's a beautiful mind. Listen, the Guineas was just one of those things that he went in last, but the way it worked, he might have been better going in a little bit earlier, because when he went in, he spooked, he reared, and the minute he hit the ground, the stall's open. So usually what happens when they do something like that, their heart rate would go up to 120, 150 beats. So what happened with him, he landed. The minute he landed, he took off. So he probably started off at 150 beats a minute, where he should be starting off way lower. And he got to halfway, and they go into the red zone where they go over 200, and he probably got there before halfway. So really it was impossible for him to keep going. And there was a lot of horses expecting him to go make the run, and so everybody was ready to go with him.